Hello, everyone, and welcome to this virtual town hall. To everyone watching on the live stream and for those who are calling in over the phone, welcome, and we hope this finds you well. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. There is a French translation of this town hall that's available at the number you can see on the screen. There is also an English phone call happening. Should we be disrupted in any way during this live stream, this town hall is going to continue over the telephone. The number you can see is right there. If you dial in, we're going to continue on over the phone. We have received many of your questions, which we're going to get to shortly during the town hall. And if you have any questions you would like to submit to the commissioner as we go along, you can submit them via cfl.ca/townhall. Now, I would like to welcome the Commissioner of the Canadian Football League, Randy Ambrosie. Randy, good to see you.
Hey, Brody, nice to see you. Brody, Barb, after 10 weeks on isolation, Barb has suggested that it might be better for us to do a real town hall across the country and send me on the road for a while. So just throwing that out there, something that we should consider down the road.
Let's do a follow-up call after we do this. How's that?
Perfect.
Commissioner, the CFL just made an announcement which included an update on the 2020 season. So could you elaborate a little bit more on that statement that was just presented?
Yeah, Brody, we've announced three things today. The strategy for our season, obviously the cancellation of our Touchdown Atlantic game in Halifax, disappointing news there, and a change to our 2020 Grey Cup strategy. But just to add a little more color. I think we've learned three things, trying to run a pro sports league during a pandemic. And first is that certainty is really hard to come by, that there are lots and lots of scenarios to consider. But in the end, that public safety and the safety of our players is the most important consideration. So all of that has gone into the announcements that we've made today.
Commissioner, the first part of the announcement talks about the potential of a short season with the earliest possible start of the season being in September. However, I want to clarify and let you clarify that this is not to be taken as a confirmation that the start of the CFL season will happen in September, correct?
Yeah, Brody, that's correct. What we wanted our fans to know is that this is a possible scenario that we are pursuing. Is the opportunity to get back to football in the early fall, after, say, right around Labor Day. It is one of the scenarios that we are pursuing. We know that in several of our CFL cities, we would not be able to play until the end of August for sure, based on public health requirements. So we're looking at September and onward as a possible scenario for getting back to this game that we all love so much.
We have had a few fans submit questions. We are going to get to your questions later, but to kind of cover this one off, if the league has looked into options like playing without fans in the stands or fans with social distancing rules in place, is that something that you and the league are considering?
Yeah, again, Brody, of the many different scenarios that we have been investigating, all of those are on the table. One, of course, being playing without fans at all. Another being, some kind of a social distancing a protocol that would allow us to have some fans in the stadiums. we're really looking at these things through multiple lenses. One, of course, the safety and health of our fans. Another, of course, the safety and health of our players and football operations people, coaches, etc. But ultimately, the most important consideration of all is just the health issue. And we're talking with public health officials, literally day in and day out, and getting guidance from them. So we are looking at multiple scenarios. We haven't, we're not really ruling anything out. We think that a practical consideration for this season is to start in September, but the work continues, and we'll of course keep our fans posted as things develop.
Let's talk now about the 2020 Grey Cup. The pandemic has had a drastic effect on travel, tourism, the economy, just to name a few. Randy, this is a bit of a two-part question. So first, how will this affect the Grey Cup and the Grey Cup Festival this year? And there was also mention in your announcement that you were considering moving the Grey Cup into December. So what would that look like?
Yeah, so we are, quite disappointed, of course. I think CFL fans from coast to coast to coast wanted to go to Regina this year, and of course for the national celebration of our great game and be there in the heartland of our game on the prairies. But obviously, with all of the things that have been happening around the pandemic, having a traditional Grey Cup just isn't possible. So along with riders, we made the decision that we would shift the Grey Cup away from Regina this fall. We've awarded the Grey Cup 2020 to the riders and to the province of Saskatchewan. We're looking forward to going back there. What we're going to do, if we are able to play, we're going to go to a win and host strategy. So essentially, the two teams that would be playing in the Grey Cup, the team that had the best regular season record would be the host of the Grey Cup this year. And you're right, talking about December, we're even looking at how do we extend our season a little bit and maybe push it back. Now that's contrary to what we've been trying to do for the past several years, move our Grey Cup forward. But in the spirit of looking at all possibilities, we're even considering pushing the game back a little bit, giving us a little bit more elbow room so that we have the possibility of getting games in this year.
To mention too, it was 2022 in Saskatchewan, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Correct. And 2021, how is that year impacted, and will that remain status quo as of now?
Yeah, Brody, again, we are hopeful and planning full speed ahead to host an amazing Grey Cup, at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. We know how excited the Ticats and Ticats fans and the city of Hamilton and the province of Ontario are to have the Grey Cup come back here. So right now, full speed ahead, and we'll be excited to have the game here in 2021, or in Hamilton, I should say, in 2021, and then go to Saskatchewan in 2022. And we think that's, practically speaking now, the best plan that we could come up with. Two great Grey Cups, one in Hamilton, followed by Regina.
Randy, let's move on to Touchdown Atlantic. Such a fabulous event. I understand that you and the team had to make the difficult decision to cancel the event this year. Do you mind elaborating a bit on that decision and what that impacts?
Well, Brody, one of the great disappointments in all of the news, of course, is that we're not going to be able to go to Halifax this year, to Atlantic, Canada, and stand shoulder to shoulder with all of the amazing people that make up that region of Canada. Of course, and even a more significant visit to Halifax this year because of the tragedy that they've underwent. We wanted to be there. We wanted to show them the CFL support for that great part of this country. But unfortunately, with the COVID virus, we just had to make that decision. I think the most important thing is to tell Atlantic Canadians that they have been and they are part of the CFL family. It is our intention to come back once this crisis passes and continue to embrace Atlantic Canada as a critical part of the CFL's future.
And Commissioner, what does this mean for fans who purchase tickets to Touchdown Atlantic?
Yeah, we'll be reaching out directly to all fans, who bought tickets. So that process will begin now, or I should say, in the days ahead. Of course, that was a sold-out game, so it was something we were really looking forward to. But I can assure all the fans that bought tickets for that game that they will be contacted in the days ahead. If they could just be patient, give us a little bit of time. But we'll be in touch with all of them in the days ahead.
Commissioner, thank you for going through that statement with us. We have season ticket holders who have sent us in questions. As a reminder, you can submit any questions right now at cfl.ca/townhall. We're going to get to as many as we can. But first, we'd like to start with a few that were submitted earlier today. So, Commissioner, the first question is, what do you think is more likely, games in the fall or the season canceled? This is from Dave Graham, who's a Stamps fan.
Well, Dave, thanks for asking the question. And the honest answer is we don't know. We are dealing with updates daily. We're talking, as I said earlier, with public health officials. We're talking with all of our, the cities and the provinces, and of course the federal government, trying to understand kind of how they're seeing this all unfold. The truth is, right now, we don't know how this is going to play out. That's why it was so important to rally around several scenarios that would give us the possibility of playing if we can. And of course, we are aware that the very real possibility exists that we won't play this year. But as they say, hope springs eternal, and we're going to try to keep a positive attitude and hope that somehow, some way we'll play in 2020. And of course, it'll all depend on what happens with the virus and the advice we get from public health.
The second question comes from Dennis Prouse, who's a Red Blacks fan, who asks, have you had discussions with any premiers as to what criteria would need to be met in order to allow fans back into the stadiums?
Yeah, we have been in conversations with the governments in all of our jurisdictions, probably most notably in their public health, amongst their public health officials who are really providing the guidance and advice that we would need. And we are talking about these scenarios that would potentially allow us to have fans in based on some of their advice and guidance. We've been looking at our facilities and trying to map out a strategy for how we might bring fans into a stadium safely. How many could we bring in? How do you accommodate those fans? What would you have to do to accommodate them if they were there? And that work continues.
Our next question comes from Guillaume, a Montreal Alouettes fan, who asks, where do things stand with the request for federal funding? Can the league survive without that funding?
Well, we've had ongoing conversations with the federal government as recently as late Friday afternoon last week. Look, our strategy was always going to look at a number of different ways to see ourselves through this crisis. One of those conversations was with the federal government. We've been talking to the provincial governments because we have so many great friends amongst the provinces. And of course, there are things we're working on our own. And, I have the pleasure, Brody, of working with a remarkable group of governors, a remarkable group of presidents. There is no quit in any of those people. And we're looking at all possible ways to make sure that we survive this crisis and that we come back bigger, stronger, and better than ever in 2021 and beyond. So, right now it's survive the crisis. That's our strategy, and then set ourselves up to thrive into the future.
Commissioner Jeff, who's a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan, asks, if things go the way we want and we have federal money to help pay for this season, how do we expect to pay back a loan when the CFL, over half of the teams lose money every year? Will the team's business model change?
Yeah, Jeff, it's a great question. And one of the things that we are talking about is how do we restructure our business model? What changes can we make to make our league stronger? I think if anything I have heard repeatedly over these past many weeks is this tremendous outpouring of support and passion from our fans who love our game, love our league, love our players, and they want to see us not just survive, but they want to see us succeed and thrive into the future. So we are looking at our business models. We're looking at our cost models. We're in conversations, and I'm happy to say, you know, we're having really good discussions with the Players Association. We're going to be talking with our coaches and football operations partners, because obviously they play such a vital role in our game. I think this is an opportunity. As much as it has been hard on Canadians and hard on CFL fans, there is an opportunity to take a step back, revisit our business model, and make sure that we're set up for a prosperous future. And that's really the spirit in which we have been working. Yes, there are significant challenges. Yes, there are obstacles to overcome, but there are also opportunities to ensure that our game doesn't just survive the crisis, but that we go on to use this to set ourselves up for a bigger, stronger future. And that's the attitude we've been bringing to bear from the beginning through to today.
I think on that note, this is a nice transition. This question comes from Travis Carra, who's a Saskatchewan Rough Rider fan, who asks, what can fans do to try and help the CFL through these times?
Yeah, Travis, thanks for that question. And I should say one of the best parts of doing this job, literally, if I was doing the list of the top 10 reasons that I love being part of this league is the fact that our fans love us so much. And I've had many fans reach out to me over the past many weeks asking that very same question. And the answer is, you're already doing a lot. We are hearing from our season ticket holders who are saying, listen, don't refund my season ticket money. What we'll do is tell us how we can help. Tell us how we can lean in. We are working on some interesting ideas that we're not ready to go live with today, but we're working on some interesting ideas for how we get our fans more involved in our game, you know, get you leaning in and helping us through this crisis. But again, I can promise you the single best thing about getting up every morning is knowing that we've got these amazing CFL fans that want to help us. They want to see us get through the crisis, and they want to see this league prosper into the future. And all I can say to all of you is thank you so very much. And we will be reaching out in the days ahead, and we'll ask you to talk to your teams as well. But we're going to reach out and share some ideas for how we can all work together to take this great league through the crisis and beyond.
Randy, this question comes from Glenn, who's a Calgary Stampeders fan, who writes, we are season ticket holders. My wife and I are both in our 60s. I have some health issues, including diabetes. We have paid in full our 2020 season tickets. We have 4 seats. Even if the season starts and the virus is still a risk to our health, we will not attend under any circumstances. Will we receive a full refund and have the option to keep our seats, or could you transfer our 2020 payments over to the 2021 season?
Yeah, again, great question, and thank you for asking it. What I'm asking all of our CFL fans, our season seat holder fans, to do in the days ahead is reach out to your teams. They all have a strategy that they're going to be sharing with their season ticket holders. Of course, what we want to do is make sure we're sensitive to the situations you're all going through. Everyone's dealing with this pandemic differently, and the circumstances are unique to everyone's family. So we want to be sensitive to that. But I think the teams are prepared to have a conversation with you about how we manage this, what we do with your season seats, what we do with your season seat money. Do you want a refund? Do you want to leave it in place for a future season? Are there other options? And the teams are going to be ready to talk to all of you in the days ahead. And all I can say is the most important thing to us is the health and safety of our fans, because it is what has driven this league for decades and decades. And I know our board of governors and our presidents and our teams would want me to say nothing more important to us than that the CFL fans get through this crisis safely and in good health.
Randy, our next question comes from Danny Campbell, who's an Argos fan, who asks, would the CFL consider using hub cities to play a partial season, even without fans in the stands? Although we are a gate-driven league, would there be some value in getting some sort of a season in with at least some TV revenue?
Yeah, again, a great question, and thanks for asking. It is one of the scenarios that we have been investigating. We've got a committee looking at this very scenario. It is complicated, and it is not an easy decision. It won't be an easy decision to make. It's complicated by all the moving parts, and of course, central to that are the health issues, that relate to our players and our coaches and football operations, to our medical staff, and all the people who would interact with our players, because the notion is you would bring everybody essentially into isolation and try to keep them isolated as they play the games. And there's a lot of complexity to that. But for the time, I'm happy to report that is a scenario that we are investigating, and the work on that will continue in the days ahead. All of this, of course, at some point, we're going to have to make a final decision on what's best. We'll be guided primarily by health-related issues, but there, of course, will be financial considerations that we'll have to account for as well. But all of that work is being done. We got a group of, as I said before, we got a group of remarkably committed presidents and governors who are helping go through this process, and we'll come out the other end with what we think is best for the CFL, best for our players, best for our fans, and ultimately best for the future of our great game.
Randy, thanks for that. We're going to continue to take a few more questions here. So the next one is from Roberta, who's a BC Lions fan, who asks, if the US players can't come to Canada to play this year, would the CFL look into an all-Canadian team with 2 or 4 teams with players from each team, perhaps a West versus East matchup?
Yeah, Roberta, it's a very interesting question, and what we are doing with everything that relates to our players is we're talking to the Players Association. I had a chance to spend time last night with Brian Ramsey from the PA, just talking about the various scenarios that we are considering. So anything that relates to how we might go forward, depending on what happens with borders and healthcare edicts. All of those things are going to have to be decided and worked on with our players, side by side with them, and we'll figure it out. So, of course, the answer I have is it's an interesting question, and I couldn't possibly answer it without sitting down and talking to the Players Association, as we go forward and we know more about what might happen with the border and other healthcare issues.
Our next question comes from Karen, who's a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan, who asks, has the CFL considered pay-per-view games to make more money? Fans might be willing to pay $5 or $10 to watch a game and support the league. Obviously, with cheaper rates, the real enthusiasts could only watch many games, while casual fans might tune into their team only.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. We do have with TSN and RDS. There's TSN and RDS Direct. So there is, if you're not a subscriber, a cable subscriber, TSN subscriber, RDS subscriber, you can in fact gain access to our games through TSN and RDS Direct. So that's an avenue. We haven't talked about a pay-per-view, specifically a pay-per-view scenario. But again, one of the reasons why we wanted to do the town hall and connect with all of you is to generate some new thoughts and new ideas. And we thank you for that question. And again, what it underlies, and I think it's so inspiring, is it underlies the reality that our fans want to help us get through the crisis. And for that, we thank each and every one of you.
Thanks, Randy. Our next question comes from Mark Wellington, who's a Schooners fan, who says he was very disappointed to hear that Touchdown Atlantic was canceled this year. And I read that budget cuts in Halifax could mean the end of the stadium project. Is there hope for an Atlantic Canada team? Is that still alive?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for asking the question. And it makes me think the idea that ideas come and go, but dreams don't die. And having Atlantic Canada and having the Schooners in the Canadian Football League is not just an idea, it is a dream. It is a dream shared by CFL fans from coast to coast. It is something that we are passionate about, the belief that the future of our league is better with Atlantic Canada in our community, with having a team of their own, would make the CFL stronger and more prosperous. So I give you this assurance: while the COVID pandemic may have cause some interruptions in our planning, that dream, that idea of the 10th team, the truly coast-to-coast Canadian Football League, that dream is not going to die, and we're going to continue to work at it in the weeks and months ahead.
Commissioner, our next question comes from Robert, who's a Red Blacks fan, who asks, if there is no season this year, what happens to the players that signed a one-year contract for 2020? Does that team still keep them for the next year?
Yeah, that question, similar to my answer from Roberta in a BC Lions fan, is that these are things that we're going to have to talk to the Players Association about. I think what's obvious is that there was no planning for a pandemic in our collective bargaining agreement, in collective bargaining agreements from all of our players, or from all the leagues around the world. Nobody had a line of sight to a pandemic scenario. So all of these things are going to have to be discussed with the Players Association as partners at the table to figure out what's best going forward. Look, I know in talking to Solomon and Brian, as have many of my colleagues, the players want to play. They love this league as much as anyone possibly can. They're committed to the future of this league, and we're committed to working with them to have them help us get through the crisis and ultimately help us get back onto the field, whether that be in 2020 or 2021. But we want to be better and stronger as we go forward, and that's going to require that we work together as partners.
Randy, this question is from Ella in Saskatchewan, who asks, I'm disappointed that the Grey Cup in Saskatchewan is canceled. Why wouldn't you wait to see if the season is canceled before you take away the Grey Cup from Saskatchewan?
Yeah, again, great question. And I might say this, the Grey Cup is more than a football game. If all we were doing is planning to play a game in Regina in November, we may have been able to wait. But the Grey Cup, as you all know, is so much more than that. The festival and the atmosphere becomes such a part of what has made the CFL such a legendary event. So what we know today, it is virtually impossible to host an event the way CFL fans and Canadians have become accustomed to. So working with the riders, working with Craig Reynolds and the board of the riders, it was very clear we weren't going to have a traditional Grey Cup this year, regardless of where we might want to play it. So the idea was it was better to shift the riders to 2022, where they can show us that remarkable Saskatchewan and prairie hospitality that we're so looking forward to. But we really believe that the play win and host model was better for this year, given these very unique circumstances. And we're looking forward to coming back to Regina, coming back to Saskatchewan in 2022.
Our next question comes from Eugenio Sainez from Calgary, who's asking, with the current situation at hand, what lessons will the CFL take away once we put all of this behind us?
Eugenio, thanks for that question. I think the answer is a little bit of a takeoff from what I said earlier. I think it's time to really work on our business model, to really look at the foundation on which our league sits. And that lesson is that a crisis doesn't make you stronger. A crisis actually makes you less strong. And this is an opportunity for our governors and presidents to all work together, work with our players, work with our coaches, to really build a stronger foundation from which this league can sit on. I think it's taking the 2.0 strategy, and maybe it's CFL 3.0, looking at a stronger version of ourselves, one where we get our cost models into place so that we are set on a good, solid foundation for the future. I think that's probably the single greatest lesson from this, is that we need to do work on our business now. There's an expression that says sometimes you spend too much time working in your business and not enough time working on it. This is a chance for us to work on our business, to set a new foundation for this league's future, so that our fans from coast to coast to coast can be cheering for these CFL heroes, these amazing players for years and decades to come. That's really the great lesson that comes from this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Those were really strong, thoughtful questions from our season seat holders. We wouldn't expect anything else from all of you, so we really appreciate you submitting those questions. Before we wrap up, Commissioner, any final words?
Yeah, Brody, thank you. Well, Brody, first of all, thanks for hosting today's virtual town hall, and this has been a pleasure to talk to CFL fans from across the country. I want to start by saying something that I said on the the night of the draft. We love our fans, and we know that our fans love us back. It is one of the truly greatest parts of being part of this league, is just how passionate people are for what we do and what we mean in all of our CFL cities. So a big thanks to each and every one of you who have joined us today for the town hall, and to all of those who are lovers of our game. I want to say a big thanks to all of our frontline workers, whether those that are in the supply chain, the grocery store clerks, and everyone who's helping us to continue to function despite very difficult circumstances. A giant thank you to them. Obviously to our healthcare community, and just again, can't thank you all enough for what you've done, for what you're doing for us, keeping us as safe and healthy as we can possibly be. Want you to all know that on behalf of all the CFL fans and the entire CFL family, we want you to know that we stand with you shoulder to shoulder, and we're so proud of the work that you're doing. I want to say to our players, obviously we want to get back on the field and have you perform as you have for decades, perform your great feats. To our coaches, to our football operations partners, I want to say to them, again, thanks for standing with us. We love everything that you do. I want to say a big thanks to the Board of Governors and the presidents who have been remarkable in leaning in, Brody, to find our way through this fog and into a better future. I really believe that the CFL is more than football. It's more than a sport. It's part of the Canadian identity. What we do matters. It's something that we have to make sure that we not just survive this, but set the stage for a brilliant future. So again, to all of you, my thanks from my family to all of yours. Best wishes. Please stay safe. Thanks for continuing to do everything you can to tamp down this virus. And I look forward to seeing you in a CFL stadium before too long. Thanks very much.
Commissioner, thank you for your time today. We hope you and your family are well and are healthy. And to everyone tuning in, thank you again for watching and for your great questions. Hoping you are all well as well. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon.